You almost ran it twice.
I almost ran the counter twice. Hello and welcome to another
Yes.
edition of DevBeardOps. What is today? Wednesday, the 7th of July.
Yes. 7-7 day.
7-7 day. Kubus, tell us what we're going to be doing today.
Before we kick that off, I first have to use our usual slogan. Just remember, folks, it's the beard on the inside that counts. And the reason this is very particular today is I actually had a dream last night about this stream and my friend Darko there, in which I decided to surprise him and shave off my whole beard. And then I had to go yes, it's about the beard inside. I promise I've got a beard inside. And I had to spend a few minutes convincing him about this, which was quite amusing. So yes, sometimes we do dream about work as well. But getting back to the stream for today. So what I've been playing with the last while at home is that I have got a home network with a couple of containers running across different servers. I've got a little HP micro server that runs a bunch of them. And I've also got two Raspberry Pis that run two services for me that we'll dig into a little bit. And I got annoyed with remembering all of the different ports that things were running on and figuring out how to get to them. So I decided I'm going to do this properly. So I got Traffic, which is a little reverse proxy up and running. And then I started playing with that. Actually, Traffic was running for a while, but I didn't actively use it because I was lazy. And then what spurred me to do this was actively just doing a Docker pull on it. And it went from version 1 to version 2, which means my configs were broken. So everything is broken. So I set about fixing it. So, toys. Let's kick off quickly. What have we got? So I'm going to be sharing screen today with a bit of code here and there just to show you what things are doing. And Darker, you can ask me fun questions. But the part about wanting to do it properly is that I also got annoyed with all of the SSL certificate warnings in the browser that I kept getting. Is this an insecure site? Click the more, click the at the bottom there because I'm lazy. So I set about fixing that as well. So couple of base things first that we need to understand. What is traffic? How do I handle SSL certificates? And ultimately, how do I automate all of this? So let's start off first. And let me quickly share my screen. I think it's somewhere. Let's just quickly open up traffic. Give me a second. Screen share screen. Let's share this one.
You cannot share a screen without telling people you're going to share a screen, right?
Yes.
So
I am sharing the screen, folks. Here we go. And doing it slowly. So let's just make this a little bit bigger because here we go. I should be able to see it nicely. Cool. So what traffic is just a reverse proxy. So it's basically a little web server. Requests go to it, and it knows how to route them somewhere else using various mechanisms. In my case, I am using the host headers. So when you specify a domain, like in my case, let's say pings.quibus.io, which is my personal domain that I use for this, that request does a DNS lookup. It sees what's the DNS record, and then goes and sends it, obviously, the request to that. That request then hits traffic, which is the entry point that's listening on, let's say, port 80 or port 443 for SSL. And then from there, it decides, okay, where am I going to actually route this request now based on my configuration? So how that works is that when we open up the traffic dashboard, let's just make this bigger as well. Oh, wait, no. There we go. Oh, you can see that it's currently, if I just go to the plain dashboard, oh, no, not that button. That button, dashboard, there we go. So here we can see that I've got a bunch of services. They're all successful. They're all happy. You can all do a bunch of other things with it if you wanted to. But what it currently has is you can see that it's configured to serve traffic to monitor.quibus.io, which is this actual URL to see what's going on and what we have up and running here. Then what we can see over here is I've got one currently configured, which is Home Assistant. So if I go home.quibus.io, you'll see it loads Home Assistant, which is just a open source home automation thing that I've got a couple of temperature sensors and things that I'm busy playing with. And the important part
is traffic actually doing the DNS routing for you in this case, or DNS resolution?
No, it's just doing the reverse proxying of this. So when we look at this quickly, if I go into my AWS account over here that I've got configured, you'll see that I've got a bunch of entries over here that all point to 192.168.5.5, which is the server where traffic is running on. I still need to work on actually load balancing this across multiple servers, because guess what? If traffic goes down, everything's broken. And we will get to that, how to make this better, a bit later in today's stream. So I mean, you can see basically just simple A records that point there. But the big win here for me is if I look at Home Assistant over here, and if I can find my mouse, sorry, there's a bit of lag. If I click over here, it says this connection is secure and gives you the normal green for a SSL certificate. And if you look at the actual certificate itself, it says it's issued by, you can see Let's Encrypt in here, R3, which is Let's Encrypt, from my understanding at least. So that's how I did this. So for those not familiar with Let's Encrypt, it is a service, I would call it, supported by the EFF, which is the Electronic Freedom Frontier, not the local political party in South Africa, in case you're wondering. And it allows you to issue SSL certificates for free that you can use and self-renew, with a couple of caveats. The caveats being you need to actually own the domain. So it's got various mechanisms for checking that. The one is to publish a file on, let's say, Quibus.io that it then accesses. In my case, that doesn't help because I don't have a public-facing service. Well, I do have Quibus.io listening out there and running on, I think it's on Amplify at the moment. But I don't serve a file there, and I don't have a web server that can actually serve a file with its little encryption bot. So then the second way you can do it is actually by doing DNS validation, where it creates a DNS record and it uses that to validate that they actually own the domain. Cool. Not Quibus, not Darker, not Darker.
I think Cyclog is trying to run a bot command. That's not a bot command. That's just a meme we're playing because Cyclog. I'm not sure if this is your first time on the stream, but there is we look alike, right? And people confuse us. I get called Cobus, and he gets called Darko. So we like to be tentatively called not Cobus and not Darko, hence the exclamation mark. So yeah, you have not been scammed. You're just welcome to the stream. By the way, I want to say hi to a couple of folks here. We have Ricardo here. Hi Ricardo, welcome. Hello Pradeepa, welcome to the stream. And Ahmed is here as well. NG Rock, yeah, I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's something similar to traffic, I guess.
No, so ngrok is a way that you can actually open up local ports, and I think it tunnels outward, and then you send a link to someone else, and they can access a service running on your machine. So in a sense, it's kind of like that, but what traffic does is a reverse proxy that all requests go into traffic, and then traffic from there knows how to route requests to other things. So one of the other things, for example, is this Home Assistant that I've got running. And if I open up VS Code over here, let me just quickly check. Where's Home Assistant? Docker Compose. I hope there's no password in here. No, there isn't. Over here, you can see what I'm doing is I'm running it in network mode host because there's some UDP and other network traffic that it needs to do, so it needs the host networking. And then what I'm doing is I'm telling traffic that I just need to add this little bit to tell it to now start routing requests to it. So I tell it what host header to look for, whether or not to use SSL, so TLS, and then also tell it what cert resolver to actually use for that, and lastly what the port is. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we can quickly dig into these. Yeah, question.
Before you continue, I just want to say again hello to a lot of folks. Tom Telecom, Ian is here. Ian, good evening. KD 2009. While Cobus is talking, please let us know. Do you have your container-based systems at home? What do you run, and how do you manage it all? Cobus, I must notice something. Your time zone is Europe/Johannesburg. Is that the correct time zone?
No, that's actually a very good point. This needs to be Africa. This is just me copy and pasting, so thank you for that. I will fix this. I actually don't know if that has broken anything yet. To be honest, I haven't noticed.
I'm sure we have a Johannesburg in Europe somewhere.
Now I need to go check all of mine. Yeah, there I've got it right. Smoke ping, Europe, London. Oh, that's bad. Yeah, let's fix all of these. Thank you. Oh, that one's not running anymore. Here we go. This one doesn't even have it. Okay, cool.
Alexa.
Sweet. Okay,
show us. Please continue.
Yes. Show magic. Right.
Show magic.
So, the magic here that I want to show you is so all of this, wanting to be able to run these things. So as a quick example, before, where did that go? Here we go. I have smoke ping running. On and let's actually open up that config quickly just to confirm with smoke ping. Cool. Here we go. Here we can see smoke ping is running, and I've mapped the default port 80 to port 8086, and this is running on In a bridge network, I created a little network called web, and then all of them will reference this web. And this is a slightly important part. So when you spin up a container on its own and you tell it to use bridge networking, it will spin up its own little virtual network for each of the containers on their own. And they won't be able to talk to each other. Now, this is sometimes where my networking knowledge of Docker becomes a little bit hazy, because I had to learn some new things for this specific implementation. But basically what happens then is I've created this new network that you can see at the bottom. I give it a and say reference the external web one. So I did Docker, I think it's Docker create network or network new or something like that, command web, and then creates that network. And then what I say is every container that I now launch in bridge mode uses that specific same network. So they're all on the same network, individual IPs, which means that they can all talk to each other, which is important because traffic is on that network as well and doing that for us. So just quickly, let's go to traffic just so I can show you what I do there. So traffic also uses that, but what I do is on the host, I remap or map port 80 and 443. So plain HTTP and HTTPS and pipe that all into the traffic container, because obviously we want traffic that hits that IP to go into the traffic container, and then traffic sends it elsewhere to the side. Cool. You with me so far, Darko? Darko. Yes. Cool. Right. So now that traffic is up and running, the next step was, okay, how do I go about, sorting out the SSL certificates that I want to do using Let's Encrypt? And that actually ended up being super simple, as in when I went to the documentation, where was it? Let's Encrypt. Basically what it says is that you need to configure it. So if I use the TOML one at the moment, so this is the full one. Let's see quickly where it says enabling Acme. Okay. It basically says configure these entry points over here. So this is what traffic users then to listen for, and then certificate resolver you define like that, and then you specify the challenge that it needs to do. So let's quickly look over here. What did I end up adding to my traffic file? It's down here, traffic TOML. So I've got those two to listen to there, and I've got something extra in here, which is this little redirect over here, which says that if anything hits traffic on port 80, so if I just enter the normal URL for any of the services, redirect that to the web secure, which is HTTPS, so it takes care of that for me automatically.
Yep.
And there are other ways you can do that by, I think it's HSTS, that you can register specific URLs and it won't even listen on port 80 and things like that. I didn't bother with that for now.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Then this is just the bit that says enable the dashboard. Then what I have over here is that this is the config to actually tell traffic, because it's got Let's Encrypt capabilities built into it, how to actually use it. So what you can see over here is I just had to set up an email address that I can get warnings on. So nothing special here from my understanding at this point. There's nothing tied to this other than notifications.
Okay.
It stores the actual certificates and the so basically it gets private certificates, private public key pairs, and actually stores all of the config in this file. So this file is important. You don't want to lose this file. So what I actually did with my traffic configuration, let's just get rid of that. There we go. With traffic over here, is you'll see that it's actually mapped outside of this into a folder, and this is actually running on my home server, which is running a RAID 5 server, RAID 5 drive configurations. I've got four terabyte drives running in RAID 5. You can see them over here. They're all happy and up, and this config is actually stored on that specific location. So I know that I won't lose the config or lose the actual SSL certificates, which is obviously important to me. Then what I tell it is that I want to use Route 53 to sort out my SSL certificates, and for that it needs a IAM policy. I'm trying to find it quickly. Let's see. I think it was Let's Encrypt traffic and Route 53. I think over here it'll show us. Let's quickly load this. But basically it gave me a list or an IAM policy that I needed to do. I'm trying to find it quickly. It's not a very I can actually open it up here rather.
So what is this for, by the way? So what's happening here? So let me try to frame my understanding.
Yes.
Is that traffic, in order to verify that you have the actual domain ownership via the means of DNS, it doesn't query DNS. It actually queries Route 53 using the API.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Correct.
Why does it use it? Why does it use the API for that? That's weird. Does it create a record, or does it just query a record?
It creates a record to verify that you can actually modify the domain. The argument here is if you can modify the domain, you've got control of the domain, you own the domain. So, sorry, I'm just quickly opening this up here. I just don't want to share things because I haven't spent enough time on this account to actually make sure that it's not exposing any of my account details and things. So I will bring the screen back now that I know it's safe-ish, I hope. No? Add to stream. There we go. So this is basically what it's allowed to do on my account, because I created a new user for certbot and then created this policy to add to that specific thing, which is it can list those to zone, it can get changes to them and change the record sets, and then also it's allowed to list host zones by name. So actually I realize now that when I think about this, given that this doesn't allow it to actually make any changes, because this is list get it can actually do a change record set. Yeah. Okay, so it can make a change. Okay, so it does some kind of validation in the back end. I actually don't know how that works, but basically I created this user, created an AWS API key pair, so an ID and a secret. I configured that as the default one on this specific server, which I'm not going to show you because guess what? I'm not going to share my credentials with you. Sorry, Darko, you are out of luck today. And then I restarted traffic. And then things happened magically in the background, and I suddenly had SSL certificates, because when I go to traffic over here, you can see that, guess what? This is also a valid certificate, but I didn't issue or install the certificate.
Yeah. Just a quick update to all the folks joining here. We have a bunch of folks joining now, so thank you all for joining DevBeardOps. This is a show where two bald guys talk about DevOps, the cloud, and AWS. And today's topic is about doing containers from home. And Kobus is currently showing how one of the services he's running from home, traffic, is being configured, and it's like doing its certificate validation using Route 53 and all that stuff. So if you have questions, if you have comments, please leave them in the chat on that side. Let us know if you are running containers at home. What are you running and why? And why are you not running containers at home? That's a bigger question. So we would like to hear from you. Kobus. Continue.
Yes, and Darko, now that I've read the message you sent me, I will try to speak a bit slower. Unfortunately, this is what happens when I start talking about something where I had a lot of fun, is I start talking a lot faster and faster. So please also shout in the comments if I start going too fast. It's, as you can see, I actually quite enjoyed this little adventure that I went on. So I will try to speak slower. Thank you, Darko. Cool. So at this point, so quickly, actual aimer. I run these containers on a little home server. It's a HP Micro Gen 10, I think it is. These little gray square, they're literally this big. It's actually sitting right here behind me. It just is small. It's light on power. I think this one, last time I measured it, was 35 watts or 30 watts, or that kind of range, with 4 spinning Rust hard disks. So the normal with disks rotating hard disk drives, 4 of them. It's like super low and it just runs, and it's got a i3 in it, 12 gigs or 16 gigs of RAM. That's it. But that's not the only one I have. I also have 2 separate Raspberry Pi servers. The one runs my Pi-hole, which serves DNS in the home network and also filters out ads and malware and those things. And then I've got a second Raspberry Pi that runs my Unify controller, which is from Ubiquiti. And what that does is that controls all my different home devices, like my Wi-Fi access point, my managed switch, and all of those things. The reason I have them separate is that those are kind of fairly critical services, and I don't want when I play with it and I break Docker, to take that down. So now we get to the fun part. Let's show you how to add another container to this when I bring up a new one. RAVN, I do not have Ubiquiti running on Docker on the Pi. I had it at one point running in a container. At this, I think the decision to just run directly is it's on a little Raspberry Pi. There's nothing else on it, so I just run it there. But I have run it as a little Pi before, as a container before. You can actually still, if you look here in my thing, you can see there's the folders actually left from when I had it in a container. And then I just decided not to, because of basically not wanting to have everything go down at the same time. And then I just felt like new Pi. installing Docker, maintaining. Let's just install it as a package and not worry about it, type thing, because I'm lazy. Yeah.
I see Ruan Becker here. He runs a bunch of things. Traffic, Bitwarden, Pi-hole, Rocket Chat, Grafana, Prometheus, Loki, Sing Thing, WireGuard, and HTPC. Wow.
Yes. I had some of those things you can see over here, Prometheus and Jenkins and GitLab and Grafana. I was playing with them at one point as containers as well. I just don't have enough use for them at the moment. I do want to get Prometheus and Grafana back up again at some point.
It's beautiful that you can run all these things in containers, right? So,
because
like I do a similar thing. I have a little Intel NUC, and I run a bunch of my Pi-holes and whatnots on it, so it's just wonderful that you can isolate them completely and not having to install things on a server directly. So that's just a fact, yeah.
And then running into install messes. Like I've got one, the Unify NVR software needs a very specific version of Java. If you download the latest one, it breaks. So I've got that running on a separate server actually, just because I don't want to deal with that and I don't want to overload this server. But yeah, it's super useful.
OMG 4301, that's not a command, by the way. So we confuse people here. We need to introduce this command to a bot. The commands, the exclamation mark Cobus and exclamation mark Darko is basically not Cobus and not Darko because we look alike. And
we often have to say, sorry, I'm not Cobus.
Exactly. I'm sorry, I'm not Darko. Yeah. So that's the whole joke. So it's not a command, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So rambling on. We now had that up and running. We've got Let's Encrypt and configure in traffic. It's serving reverse DNS.
Yep.
And like I said, I have got Pi-hole running as well, which is over here. You can Pi-hole smoke ping I want to show you. So actually Pi-hole you can see over here is also just SSL. It's running. It's working.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that config in a little bit. So now let's say I spun up a new container and I want this to work. What I had to do before, if I want to access this, is first remember that it's on port 8086. Also make sure that those ports don't clash with other containers that I'm running, because you map them by doing this on the container. Let's see, smokes ping over here. You can see I've got that mapping, which is the container's port mapped to the actual host port. And that's the thing that ultimately also annoyed me, is like I had this long list of things and then I would remove a container and then spin up a new one, and then I ran out of port numbers and just nightmare admin. So how do we get this onto traffic? Because if I go to traffic now and I say, let's just replace this with things.quibus.io, it says not found, because guess what? When I look at my config over here, HTTP services, we can see that while smoke ping is here, it's trying to route it to that port, but there's no rule for it to know how do I, send it traffic there actually. So what you need to do is you go into your just in my case, Docker Compose file. And what I do is I tell it that, hey, listen, the URL pings.quibus.io is going to be used for this, port 80. Please note here, this is something I got confused with the first time, is like, because traffic's running on the same bridge network as the other containers, you specify the container port, not the MAC port on the host. Because I sat here for probably half an hour trying to think about, why is it not connecting? I specify the right port, all of that. Yeah. Also, in this case, you don't actually have to specify port 80. You can take out this line. Okay. Because if the container only exposes one port, traffic will automatically map the route to that to get it there. Yeah, and that's how you do it. So basically, you just add these on. So that now, I just tend to leave these so I can access them if I need to. We save the file. We go into the folder. This is smoke ping. And then, not restart. Come on. Docker compose down and Docker compose up and detached. Sorry, actually, let's just dismiss this. Cool. Hopefully you can read that. It's not too small. It's basically just fine. Docker down, Docker up. And what this will do once it comes up, let's give it a few seconds. Cool, is in traffic. Now when I go over here is we can see here's smoke ping.
Okay.
Let's see HTTP routers. We can see all of a sudden there's now this little shield, which means it's got an SSL certificate. It does that. If I click on the actual HTTP server over here, if I go to smoke ping, you can see it's still routing over there. But there's now this routing rule for pings. And now if I go to this and I refresh this, guess what? I get to smoke ping. And guess what? It's got a proper SSL certificate.
Nice.
Which is nice.
And,
yes.
And it's even if it's resolving to like a local IP address, right? So I guess this is pings.cobus.io is a 195 thing, 192, right?
Yes. So remember, this is a container that or service that I run inside a container. So now I can automatically map to it. So my next thing that I want to do is, well, I've got my Pi-hole running and I've got my Unify controller running on static IPs, which I statically assign through my MikroTik router to them.
Okay.
How do I actually get traffic to go there? So that's the next part I want to show today, which is because that also was a little bit of head scratching, like how would I go about doing that? So what we need to do there is to actually change traffic's configuration. So what I have in here is there's a static configuration and then there's a dynamic configuration. And all that means is that there's an extra config file that I then can add things onto that traffic knows how to go read and actually use that as a configuration. So what does that actually look like? Over here. Cool. At the moment, by default, it just has the actual dashboard configuration for traffic itself in there. So traffic, it's one of those like brain things that traffic itself knows how to route to its own traffic dashboard because it accepts the traffic. But now we want to add, let's say, our Pi-hole in. Let's do that one first. So what I need to grab over there here is I just plonked it over here so I can just copy and paste, is I add a new service, which is the Pi-hole. It uses load balance service, and I tell it that it runs on that specific IP, 5.8.80. So I can actually just open that in the browser, put that in here rather. And what you can see over here is this is where my Pi-hole is running. So we can see that it's running insecurely on there. Cool. Okay, then what I also need to copy over there is, so that's the actual service. So I'm telling traffic, hey, there's a new service out there. It's listening on that static IP address, but I still can't route to it because I haven't added a router, which is a config construct inside traffic as well. So what I need to do for that is to grab this, which is the routing portion. So I can plonk this down here. I actually don't know if the order makes any difference, but you can see over here now I've got a new router for Pi-hole. And we can say that the rule is for that host, and it's going to use this web secure one, which is port 443, and it's going to point to the service Pi-hole. So this is how you wire it up. So similar to Kubernetes, when you spin up a pod, you expose it as a service, and then you have to add an ingress rule to say, okay, cool, now how do I go from the ingress to the service, which actually goes to the individual pod to actually get things there. And you can see over here, it's not a lot of complicated. The big important part over here is that I tell it how to actually get the TLS for this, which is using Let's Encrypt. Okay. I think this might be taken care of. Well, this is taken care of by those labels that I put on the actual container. So if I go back here to Smokebing, so it's similar to over here where I tell it to use TLS and I tell it to use Let's Encrypt. But in this case, what I'm doing, because remember, this is not a container, so it doesn't know to do that automatically unless I tell it to actually go and do that. Cool. So we get that, and then now what I have to do is I just have to Docker restart my traffic container because it needs to obviously load this configuration. I think there might be a way to do dynamic configuration. I haven't spent time on that, so there might be that. But if I go to traffic now, what I can see over here is that I now have Pi-hole, and it can actually route to it. And if I go over here and I say, I think it's Pi-hole, IO. Oh yeah, I need to go to /admin to get the dashboard. Cool. We've got Pi-hole running, and it's all right. Right. Great. So now there's one last trick that I need to show, which is, no, not this one, not you. There we go. Which is for my Unify load balancer. So basically, to the same thing, a router for the Unify controller that I have running, and then also.
And Unify is not running within a container, right?
Also running on a separate Raspberry Pi. And it's also got a service, and this you can just put under, so on a single HTTP service where the router is a top level one. And I go in here, where's my service up here, and I plonk that in there, and I save it, and we do a Docker restart again. Wait for it quickly. Tunk, 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 tunk. Yeah, you do a lot of Docker restarts. That's the one thing that got me a little bit with all of this.
There's a question coming in from M17TEA.
Yes. Can you add a container inside the... you can. It involves you running certbot inside of the container, from my understanding. I don't think you can add it externally, and because if you think about it, the container itself, if it wants to use it as a SSL certificate, it needs to provide it inside the container itself. But that kind of goes like against the whole point of this, because what you want to do with reverse proxies and service meshes and things is to take common functionality and take it out of the container and host that externally, so that there's a single thing that manages for you, instead of having 5 different containers with 5 different Let's Encrypt configs to all fetch their own certificates. Rather have a central thing like your reverse proxy that then starts going into service mesh world, actually deal with that for you. Okay. But continue the questions, please. The whole point here is to have a little chat and have fun. So now I've added my Unify one, and that runs on unify.quibus.io. Containers restarted. Let's just make sure I can see it. So there's Unify. Yep. There's the HTTP service over here. Unify, it's by the file provider. You can see it points to that one now. So now this, when I plonk that in there and I go in there, it's not happy.
Okay.
And this was like, also took me a bit of time to actually figure out what is going on here. Now, what is going on is the following. When I go to my configuration over here, let's quickly grab this. And this is where my annoyance with this whole world started, actually. And I plonk that in the browser. You get this message, which I'm sure all of you have seen if you run anything at home. Guess what? The certificate that you're trying to hit is not valid, because if I click over here, we can see that it's not a valid one. Now I can say in advance, and I can say, okay, cool, proceed to the actual Unify site, which is over here, my Unify controller. The reason this happens is that the SSL certificate is not valid, and traffic by default will not direct traffic to an insecure SSL certificate that it can trust. So there are 2 routes over here. Firstly, you can go to this server, download the certificate, upload and add it to traffic saying, okay, please trust this certificate in future. But if I regenerate this, let's say what's a container, I recreate the container, it's build a different certificate, and I have to go trust that one again. So to get around that, there's the last little config that's useful, which is over here, which is this part, which says insecure skip verify. So it skips the verification of insecure certificates. And this is a top-level config for traffic. So you add it in the main traffic TOML file, and then actually just save it. And guess what we have to do again, Docker? Or Docker? Docker. You're now called Docker. Hey, Docker, how are you doing today?
Restart Docker.
Cool. Where's that? This one. And now if I just refresh this, guess what? Voila. It is all working and magic.
Wow.
So what this makes me super happy is I'm now at a point where I can literally, if I want to spin up something new, let's say Jenkins or GitLab, I need to add a Route 53 record entry to actually point to 5.5. I can probably add a wildcard record as well for that. I don't want to, because I might have other subdomains that do other things at some point. I haven't really decided yet, but that would be a way to deal with this, or to just move this to a complete subdomain. So let's say home.quibus.io or containers or whatever, and then point everything there. But that's the next step. Now, where we are going to start chatting Docker is that the things that I haven't done yet is, you saw me editing a whole bunch of Docker Compose files and doing everything by hand. And we are DevOps people, and we do not like to do it that way. So this is not the lazy way. I want to start managing it. So the next step for me will be to figure out how to bring in potentially ECS to manage these for me on-prem using ECS Anywhere, or run Kubernetes or something. I haven't quite figured that out. But there's also server maintenance at the moment that I need to do, which basically, if I want to show you how I do server maintenance at the moment, let me just open this up again, hide that. So it's basically this. Sudo apt-get upgrade -yes. I think I actually put a yes in here. So this is currently my super evolved, how I manage all my hardware. The server itself, as you can imagine, this is not great. I can already see you getting uncomfortable. And then if you want to see how I do my Docker upgrades, you see this great file?
Wow.
You see this great one?
Wow.
This is literally, I'm doing it at the moment.
Damn.
So as you can imagine, this is not stable. This is not good. It uses the latest tags for all of the containers. I already got burned by this when I upgraded traffic accidentally. Well, not accidentally, intentionally, but didn't realize there was a version 2 of traffic coming out, and my config files didn't work.
Wow.
So yeah. Cool. Portainer. So Jovan, thank you, Docker, is talking about Portainer. I actually don't know Portainer, so I will need to put that on my list of things to play with. But I mean, Docker, so you've had a bit more experience playing and managing servers at scale. Tell me what I need to install next. Now I need to do this.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to managing servers, actually managing containers, be that on premises, be that in the cloud, and in this case, we're talking about just home containers to help with your networking. I found that that actually using some of the AWS features helped me a lot. Now, this comes with a caveat: it costs you money. Using services such as AWS Systems Manager for managing operations on instances can cost you money if you reach a certain threshold. So, but what I do at home, because I have a couple of servers, like my main container server, my main Docker server sitting in a rack next to me, and I also have this thing. It's like my little Raspberry Pi rack, which runs Docker on itself as well. The way I manage and configure all of these things is just use a Systems Manager. AWS Systems Manager is a service from AWS to basically just manage your infrastructure. Now that can be with by running your commands, if you wish, like that. You can remotely execute those commands without even having to SSH into the system by creation of runbooks, or you can do more complex things by introducing configuration management with Ansible or Chef or even Puppet through Systems Manager, right? So that's a really neat way to kind of manage those things. And then we have Ricardo mentioning here, giving a +1 to ECS Anywhere. This is a new service feature basically of ECS that came out recently, I think, where you can actually run containers under the ECS orchestration engine anywhere. So ECS, for those who do not know, ECS is a service that basically it's a container orchestrator on top of AWS. How it works: you launch your virtual machines, your EC2 instances, you use your Fargate, your serverless containers, and you manage them all under the ECS umbrella. You have your services, you have your tasks, task definitions, and all those things. However, you were limited to running containers exclusively on top of AWS. Sometimes you may want to manage your containers somewhere else, like, for example, at home. So what ECS gives you the ability to is basically to bring in external servers, instances, Raspberry Pis as cluster members, right? So you introduce like a Raspberry Pi as a cluster member to your ECS cluster, to your ECS cluster, yeah? And all of a sudden, ECS can actually deploy container tasks onto that thing. So it is a really, really neat way to do that. So I have not yet gone into the full-on weeds with ECS Anywhere, but it is a really, really great thing. And we see again, Ricardo is playing around with this, and his comment is that he has deployed an application in a hybrid environment, right? Runs a single application, deploys it into ECS, and via a load balancer, which is amazing, you access your application, which is running at home, via load balancer in the cloud, right? So think of your smoke ping or your traffic, or, well, these are not applications you wish to have publicly available, but let's say you have something that you wish to have publicly available. You want to run it at home, but with the ability to actually serve it from the cloud, which is pretty cool. I think ECS Anywhere is just a great thing, right?
Yes, I actually want to
go ahead.
quickly answer one of the questions we have here regarding EC Anywhere from L4, which is struggling with EC Anywhere. If I can find my mouse, sorry, it's
put it here.
Sorry. To create a virtual tunnel between Raspberry Pi and ECS Anywhere. Suggestions, yes. Give me 2 seconds to get you the link. No, not that one. So we have a developer advocate on the containers team called Nathan Peck, who did a very good guide on this. Here we go. Let me share my screen again quickly. Bring that up. Come on, click. There we go. No,
okay,
not this one. Oh, yeah, actually, I posted it on the official AWS blog.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Basically, I will pop the link over here quickly. There we go for the folks that are watching. And what we have over here is that he went through the whole architecture of setting things up. Here is the VPN he actually sets up between his VPC and the cluster of Raspberry Pis that he has. I think he uses one of them to be a gateway for the rest of the cluster, and then they route their traffic through them. But basically in this he takes you through every single step that he uses over there, what hardware he uses, how he built it, setting up the how to register them. And if I remember correctly, here we go. Here's the section on how to set up the site-to-site VPN that he uses that to actually do that, which is super useful about it.
But make sure to check out what Ricardo is also writing. He is going to be creating a blog post on all of that stuff. So I actually need to chat with him today about all that stuff because we are preparing something regarding ECS Anywhere to show on a future event.
Yes.
So yeah.
So, so
question from Dragunov: can I do all this with the free tier in AWS?
No. Unfortunately, so the ECS Anywhere, if you're running it with an on-prem or non-AWS run instance, there is a charge per month for it. I actually don't know what it is. ECS Anywhere.
Dragunov 308. If you have a concrete idea you want to do something, if you have a project, reach out to us directly. We may be able to provide you with maybe some AWS credits. So reach out directly to us via social media if you want with your idea, and we would be happy to support you. If a cost is a factor, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, over here it says it's 1.025 cents per hour. So 24 cents a day, whatever that is, times 30, $7.50, I think,
per month.
So yeah. And of course, you make use of ECS Anywhere. But I mean, from my perspective, I'd be happy to pay this out of my own pocket, just the amount of time that I'll save doing this. So I'll probably do this in the next week or so, hopefully. Yeah, maybe I'll report back next week's success, depending on how the rest of this week goes, and if the kids let me sleep. But we will see.
So there's different ways you can manage your containers again on top of AWS. At home, right? So your home network containers, how you can manage them using the cloud. So ECS Anywhere is an orchestration engine. However, to manage those underlying instances, and you will see that in Nathan's in blog post, is that you use AWS Systems Manager agent, which is just a little agent installed on top of your running instances, and it has native support for Raspberry Pis and for all major OSs. You install the agent, and then you have full as much as you give it, access to that operating system remotely, which means installing packages, running remote commands, running playbooks and runbooks. All of those things is possible through the powers of AWS Systems Manager. So AWS Systems Manager, a little tool, a little feature that kind of sits in the back and does a lot of things for the more sexy features out there, right?
So I mean, for sysadmin stuff, it's like one of those services. The first time I discovered, I think the first thing I discovered was parameter store, and I was kind of like, I can store configs in here, and I can use a command to actually get them. Was like amazing, because there's even some people have built little apps. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but SSMenv, I think, is the one, where you specify the path, and you say, so you prefix in your Docker container, you say SSMenv, and then the actual path that it needs to grab it from, and then the actual container's entry point, and then it'll automatically grab all of the configs under that path, change them into uppercase underscored config values as environment variables, and pass them into the container without you having to do anything. And I used that quite a lot in the past. And then also that run command, like for those folks not familiar with it, is you can set up a document inside AWS that says do the following things, like a bash script, and then say go run this on the following servers, and you can give people access to be able to run that script but not modify that script. So in my use case back in the day, it was I had to restart a service on a server remotely, but I didn't want to give root access to the developers because sometimes they didn't know what they're doing, and I don't want them to be able to break things. So I took this, created this command inside a document, it's called, inside SSM runtimes, gave them access to that, coupled that into a Jenkins job, so they could literally go into Jenkins and say, please restart the server, click. And Jenkins would merrily go and execute that AWS command that then executed the actual restart command, which is quite useful.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let me actually show you this. Maybe I can show this as well. So thingy. I'm gonna share a screen as well. So zoom in. I apologize for my very loud keyboard. That's just the way it is. So share, window.
Yeah, I'm just happy my keyboard is still working. I lost my RGBs on my mouse yesterday due to my headphones melting.
Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah.
So I actually the NUC next to me, so I can just I'm currently from my home. I can SSH into my NUC and just do my passwords and all those things, right? So I'm running currently at the thing that runs all of my Docker containers. Now, if I want to do this remotely, if I want to do this from somewhere else, I actually have this instance being managed by AWS Systems Manager. To do that, I can just do AWS SSM, start session, and then target is my instance ID. However, because this is my home instance, it doesn't have a proper instance ID, right? It's not your standard EC2 instance. It has something called a managed instance. So it starts with MI. You can get this thing from your SSM console. This is, however, mine. If I do this, hopefully, plugin is not installed. Ah, damn. Okay, so I don't have a plugin installed on this box itself. The thing you need here is plugin. What it will do, the plugin will emulate SSH. So it doesn't use SSH per se. It emulates SSH over port 443, right? So let's actually install the Systems Manager plugin. So this is
live demoing.
Live demoing, yeah. Install the plugin for Linux, curl, Intel. This is fine. So paste like that. Ooh, RPM. Why RPM? Ubuntu. Wait, not that one.
Ooh, wait. You're an Arch person, aren't you?
Yes, but this is Windows, so WSL, right?
Oh, that just confuses me.
What is the session manager? Will this work? Okay, cool. This doesn't look good. Starting session, post and start not found.
Start not found.
Stop not found.
Ugh.
Okay, let me try again. Maybe it works. It works. There you go. It's just a problem with install. Now you can see that I'm currently running as SSM user, but if I cat etc host.
Oh, this is the one thing I hate about the Windows Linux thing is like the ups and downs and some of the clickings and things aren't quite the same.
So I've actually now connected to my home NUC system through the power of the internet, and actually I'm gonna switch to Bash. Basically I am running this as SSM user. I can switch to Darko, of course, to my default user, and I'm now running fully inside of my system through the internet, through SSM, so all of those things. It's wonderful, right? So I am a big fan of that, and I actually had to use this. I was home for vacation, but I had to pull something off of my NAS in Berlin. So I went to Serbia on vacation. I needed a file from my NAS, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? My NAS is not exposed to the internet. However, this thing is. So I SSH into my system through the power of Systems Manager, Session Manager, and just grab the file. So just a little thing. Again, this is a very edge use case. You wouldn't use this just because for fun. But you can basically take all of your Raspberry Pis, associate them to Systems Manager. Number one, you will have this kind of SSH access to all of them from anywhere, if you have permissions. Number two, you can actually execute specific run commands, specific scripts, specific things on top of those systems to, for example, install Docker, right? And such, right? I wouldn't go manually on each of these Raspberry Pis and set up Docker one by one, because that's not fun. So doing it more automatically with, for example, Systems Manager is kind of the way to go. So yeah, that was good. Kubas.
Yes.
Will you attempt to manage this again through some ECS Anywhere, or at least Systems Manager or something like that? I know this is all manual, and you mentioned that you want to do it more automatically.
Yes. So plans at the moment are that I definitely want to use ECS Anywhere, just because it's an AWS service that I haven't played with yet.
Yeah.
But also, second reason is, remember all those broken deep braces I have?
Yep.
I have got a plan for them, which is to run a proper big ECS cluster. So I'm going to start slowly fixing them up and figuring out which ones work and which don't to actually do that. But also because I can actually configure all of this using Terraform. Because remember, Terraform can set up my ECS cluster, ECS Anywhere, and all the ECS tasks and things that I want to run. Because ultimately, I want to get to a point where I've got a proper CI/CD pipeline for this that I just put commits to, and it actually sorts it out for me. Because I want to get to a point where if the server dies, and it will die at some point, I don't have to deal with that complexity. And that's currently my challenge. Is that how do I get to that point? Because I've had to redo the server once, and it was an absolute nightmare. So the first step for me now is like I've taken all my Docker configs, I've actually committed them to a private GitHub repo, so all the Docker Compose files. So if that server breaks tomorrow, I'll be very sad. But I should be able to get the config files off the actual disks itself because it's RAID 5. I still need to figure out, probably get an S3 backup job of some kind. That just pipes it up to S3 every night. And then I can just go and replace the server if I need to.
But if you run things from, like, for example, if you run things from ECS Anywhere, you do not have to rely on having those configuration files stored anywhere, because if the data from the containers is being stored elsewhere, you're just fine. You can just add new clusters to your ECS Anywhere cluster and just add new things. However, a big caveat. A big caveat. This is very expensive to run at home, right? If you're just going to run it for fun, I use the term very expensive. I think you have to pay money. That's the thing, right?
$7.50.
Again, just putting it out there. We're not advocating that, you should spend $7 a month to manage 3 containers at home. It's a great nifty tool. You can play with it. You can learn like that. Ultimately, this is for proper high scale, enterprise deployments, not even enterprise deployments, but if you have hardware on premises, if you have invested as a company into servers, into racks, into things, do not let that go to waste. If you're running things in containers, you can mix and match both the cloud and on premises through the same console, right? That's just wonderful. That's the benefit here, right? Running your Raspberry Pis at home is fun, but it's a novelty, right? So that's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the things, the more stuff I run at home, the more I realize I don't want to run things at home, because some of you might be aware, we frequently get power interruptions in South Africa due to various reasons. So I've got a big UPS that can run for, I think, 3 hours at the moment, which is normally enough to cover the power outage. But before that, I had a smaller UPS. So I had that smaller UPS configured and then connected to one of the servers running NetD. Then it had multiple other copies of NetD trying to communicate and shut them down in the right order and safely. No, I don't want to do that on a data center level. No.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. So, managing something, again, using excess resources in this case, and I love the fact that because you can almost throw commodity hardware at this, right? You just throw commodity hardware and it's being managed all from the from the safety of the cloud. It's just wonderful, right? So, lost algorithm. Definitely you can use it, and that's the whole point. Using it on Raspberry Pis is fun, right? It's just if you have a cluster at home, if you have things to play with, that's fun and cool. But you absolutely do use this for actual real life scenarios where you connect on-premises stuff to the cloud. Right? So
I mean, definitely. I mean, this is one of the things back in the day because I remember I came from the world before cloud. I would have loved to have this, because we had a rack full of servers, I think something like 10, homemade servers. And I mean, we built Genta from scratch on that cluster and ran things, and it's like, that was a nightmare. I would not want to do that again.
I would also agree with Alanrod. Running Pis is not a novelty. I agree. Don't get me wrong. I think running Pis is great. It's just not a lot of people run Pis as a production workload. Not because Raspberry Pis are bad or anything. I think they're amazing, but it's just, you get more bang for the buck for actual. If you want to run a production workload, take $200 and just buy a physical server, used one. If you want to do it from home, but do it from the cloud. Then I think it's much better.
I need to. This is the one when I next have a need. Let me actually just open this up again. So I'm not affiliated to HP, or don't get any money from them. But this one over here. Wait, sorry, the mouse over here. This little ProLiant one. That's the next thing I want to buy, because when let me just show you when you open it up. And if anybody knows of different servers that actually come in this type of form factor, this price point and things, please shout, because I love boxes. Can I open?
I love the fact that 2 guys who work for a cloud vendor here are talking about
there you go.
buying on-premises equipment.
It doesn't have proper photos. No. Okay. But in case, so this one at the front, you can open it up and it can take 4 3.5-inch drives. And at the back, it has 4 gigabit network interfaces. So, this is definitely something I like. But I mean, so for those talking about the NUCs, I also like the idea of the NUC. The only challenge there is you can only have one hard drive or I think one hard drive with it.
Well, mine even has like an M-SATA. That's it. That's the only thing that mine has. Yeah.
See, for me who's a box hugger, this is super nice. The 4 drives, and over there you can see. Will it zoom in? 4 network adapters.
Yeah.
That's just like, oh, I want that. I want to be able to hug my box at home.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Yeah. So with that being said, this has been a kind of a review on how Cobus runs his traffic at home, how he runs it. How he runs a lot of his containers at home, and in fact, you can actually manage your servers and your containers straight from the cloud using services such as AWS Systems Manager and ECS or Elastic Container Service anywhere. Basically, able to do things from a cloud dashboard, which is pretty cool. We've heard a lot of folks running here some containers at home as well, which is pretty cool. I think a lot of us do. It's just a fun thing to do as well. Join us next week at the same place, same time. So next Wednesday, 1 p.m. Central European Time. Join us again for a new stream of DevBeardOps, where these two gentlemen talk. We're going to be covering, not sure, we're going to see if Cobus manages to fix, to get his containers maintained by
ECS Anywhere.
By ECS Anywhere. In any case, do follow us on social media. We will be announcing the streams and all that stuff. So just do that stuff. And yeah, B0X9, it's the XKCD chart to worth time of automation. That's just the best chart ever, right? This thing here,
this one.
So
the answer is no. I want my home automated. I don't care how long it takes.
Yes, this chart is perfectly valid, but the engineers in us are just like, we love automating things. So, and we understand you do as well. So have fun automating stuff. So cool. Thank you all for joining us. Feel free to send us any suggestions, comments, ideas to our social media handles. You can find them at the bottom of this thing here. We're also, my name is Darko Mesros. This is Cobus Bernard. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, MySpace, Friendster.
No.
IRC, Freenode. You can find us all over. Just let us know. Send us suggestions, comments. We're happy to get your messages. And yeah, we will be seeing you next Wednesday at the same time, same place.
Yes.
Okay. Goodbye.
Cheers.